Acrylic techniques. You're going to use your pencil and your ruler because you are going to divide your page into 12 sections. The first thing you're going to do is that you're going to go ahead and measure horizontally from where the perforated edges are in your sketchbook. So from that line, you're going to locate the center point. So 1/2 of 9 is 4 1/2. You're going to go ahead and draw a line down the middle vertically. And then you're going to do the same, but you're going to find 6 because of 12 inches, 1/2 of 12 is 6. You're going to locate the center and then draw a line down the middle horizontally. You'll have 4 squares or 4 rectangles. Then each square you are going to mark every 2 inches. So skip the 1, go to 2, 3, 4. So every square you're going to divide into 3 sections, and each section is 2 inches in height. All right, you will be using the drawer that has all of your acrylic paints with the 3 new brushes and the palette knife. You will be using your palette, some water, your sponge, and some paper towels. If you have any stencils, go ahead and grab those. If you don't, then don't worry about it. Okay, the first thing you're going to do is take out your palette knife and your 3 brushes. Now, because your brushes are brand new, they're a little stiff, but you can go ahead and soften the bristles. Okay, now these are closed just like our watercolor tubes, so you're going to have to use the cap to puncture a hole through the top. Pick your favorite color to start. Go ahead and add an amount to your palette. Now, the first technique you're going to learn is called hard or soft edge. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is that you're going to drop your paintbrush in water and go ahead and grab your paper towel and set it next to your palette. Because your water is so saturated in your paintbrush, you're going to dab it lightly on your paper towel and go ahead and grab the color that you chose. Now, the first thing you're going to do is that you are going to brush on your color, and you're going to see that you are creating a hard edge. Now you're going to go ahead and create your soft edge. And so you're going to go ahead and add more water, and you're going to see that the edge of your line is a little bit more blurry and softer. Hard edge right here, soft edge. All right, the second technique is when you can achieve a drip and a splatter. For the drip, go ahead and grab your color one more time with a little bit of extra water this time. You're going to apply the color, and then you're going to tap your sketchbook on the table and allow it to naturally drip the way that it wants. I am adding more water to it so that it has more liquid for it to drip from. For the splatter, you are going to saturate your paintbrush with color, and then using your fingertips, you're going to do as I am doing here. You can also achieve this using a toothbrush. Okay, our third technique is called sgraffito. Now, sgraffito is actually an Italian word for scratch. And it is also a technique that we use in ceramics. But when you're playing with acrylic paint, this is how we do sgraffito. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more paint to my palette. And then I'm gonna go ahead and brush on my color fairly thick on my paper. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and use the back side of my paintbrush and I'm going to sgraffito my design into my acrylic. As you can see, I'm literally scratching away the color and I'm creating lines and patterns over my paint. Fourth technique is called wet on wet. So just like the watercolor techniques that we did in the past, you're going to first brush on water on your paper. And so your surface is going to be wet. Then when you brush on your acrylic, it's going to create a bleeding effect. And that's why it's called wet on wet. The fifth technique is the dry brush. This time you're going to use your round brush that has not been dipped in the water at all, and you're gonna go ahead and dip it directly into your paint. In this case, I decided to go ahead and grab my green. Now, I am literally drawing lines straight without adding any water, and you can see it's got a dry brush texture. The sixth technique is using our sponge. So go ahead and use a sponge that you use for your watercolors. Pick the corner of the sponge that matches the color that you are working with and go ahead and dab the color on your paper, creating that texture. So you just dab, dab, dab. You can add a little bit of the other color to give it some more depth and layer. The seventh technique is using a stencil. As you can see, I've got these letter stencils. If you have any other stencil, go ahead and use it. And if you do not, you are welcome to create your own stencil. But if you are not sure how to do that, I can help you with that. And don't worry about creating that one technique if you are not sure how to create your own stencil or if you don't have one. If you have one, go ahead and use a stencil that you have at home. So when you use your stencil, you can either use your paintbrush or your sponge. Okay, now for your eighth technique, we are going to be using masking tape or painter's tape. So go ahead and tear a little bit of your painter's tape or your masking tape, and you are going to create any pattern or design using your masking tape. And what it's going to do is that it's actually going to resist the acrylic onto your paper. So go ahead and lay it down in any way that you want. And then you're going to brush your color over the entire thing. But what you're actually doing is that you're resisting the color from being saturated on your paper with your masking tape. So after, you're going to go ahead and peel your masking tape or your painter's tape, and you're going to see that no color saturated that part of your paper. So depending on the shape or the size of your masking tape is how your resist shape will look. Your ninth technique is called scumbling. Now, this is a technique that many artists have been using for a number of years. What you do is that you're going to use your dry brush, and this time you're going to do small circles over and over and over again, and it adds a textural layer, and it could also be a translucent layer. So tiny circles over and over again. In this case, I created a gradient from dark to light. Your 10th technique is called impasto. You're going to go ahead and use your palette knife. Now you're going to grab some paint and you're going to spread it on the paper just like it was butter. So go ahead and play with the angle that you apply your paint onto your paper, and you're going to allow for that natural texture to happen. You're going to spread it on fairly thick. Your 11th technique is when you layer some colors. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and start with my blue color, but as you could see, I am making sure that my paintbrush isn't full of water. So I'm just going to add some simple lines or brush strokes, and then I'm going to wait for it to dry. Now, once it's dry, then you can go ahead and layer a second color. I'm using a new paintbrush, and I'm going to layer some yellow. Now, it's important that you allow that first layer to dry, otherwise your colors will mix. And finally, our 12th technique is called overlay or glaze. It's similar to the layer, except that we're not necessarily waiting for your first layer to dry. I'm going to go ahead and start adding some brush strokes of a dark blue. And then I am going to transition into the teal. As you can see, it's the color that's overlaid. And because it's not completely dry, the first layer, it kind of blends together. All right, so you've got your 12 techniques. You need to make sure that that page completely dries before you close your sketchbook so it doesn't stick to the page before that. And you will need to clean your palette and wash your paintbrushes. Good job.